Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time
So you don't have to. I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full-time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Ephraim, here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. Mountains have a strange way of reminding people how small they really are. A forest in the summer can feel welcoming, a mountain trail can feel like adventure, but when winter arrives and the wind begins carving across frozen peaks, the landscape changes personality. The same place that felt beautiful can suddenly feel hostile, ancient, almost predatory. Snow absorbs sound, darkness falls early, distances become deceptive. One wrong decision can mean the difference between survival and vanishing without a trace. History is filled with stories of explorers, travelers, and adventurers who walked into the wilderness and never came back. Sometimes their stories are clear. A storm arrives, the food runs out, the cold wins. But sometimes the evidence left behind tells a much stranger story. Footprints that end suddenly, shelters abandoned in panic, and people fleeing into the night with no shoes, no coats, and no explanation. Tonight we're exploring three of the most chilling wilderness mysteries ever recorded. The Dyatlov Pass Incident in the frozen Ural Mountains of Russia, the bizarre disappearance of the Yuba County Five in California's Sierra Nevada, and the terrifying winter survival story of the Donner Party. Three different tragedies separated by decades and continents, yet each one leaves us with the same unsettling question. What could possibly drive people to abandon safety and run into the freezing dark?
In January of 1959, 10 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in the Soviet Union set out on what was meant to be a challenging but achievable winter expedition. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student with a reputation for meticulous planning and strong leadership. Winter trekking in the Soviet Union was treated almost like a sport, with official difficulty ratings assigned to routes across the country. The journey Dyatlov's group planned to complete would qualify for the highest level certification, Category 3. The hikers trained for months. Their equipment included skis, heavy winter clothing, navigation tools, and cameras. They packed carefully, measured rations, and detailed route plans. These were not reckless thrill seekers wandering into the wilderness. They were disciplined outdoorsmen who understood the dangers of winter travel. Originally, 10 people were scheduled to make the journey, but one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, turned back early due to severe joint pain, and the decision saved his life. The remaining 9 continued deeper into the northern Ural Mountains.
Just saying, can you imagine how Yuri feels after finding out all this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would lose my ever-loving mind.
Photographs recovered later from the camera show moments of joy and camaraderie. The group joked, posed in the snow, and recorded entries into their journals. They moved steadily across frozen rivers and through dense forest, hauling sleds of equipment behind them. Their destination was Mount Otorten, a remote peak roughly 600 miles north of the nearest major city. But before reaching that mountain, they would stop on the slopes of another, a place known by the indigenous Mansi people as Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain.
I'm just going to say, no matter how many times I've had to write or type the word camaraderie, I never think it's spelled the right way. And I have to go into Google to make sure I spell it right. Because, yes, when you're looking at it, you're like, that doesn't look right. But if you spell it, like, sound it out, I guess that makes sense. But it never looks right. I think I typed it like 4 times. I'm not going to lie. The cameras recovered from Dyatlov expedition became some of the most haunting pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. When rescuers developed the film weeks later, they weren't looking at staged photographs or official expedition records. They were looking at the final snapshots taken by a group of young adventurers who had no idea that they were documenting the last day of their lives. One photograph shows the hikers standing together in the snow, bundled in heavy coats and scarves, skis slung over their shoulders. The wind was blown snow across the landscape behind them, and despite the harsh conditions, several of them were smiling. Another image captures Lyudmila Dubinina laughing while struggling through deep snow, her face half covered by a scarf as the wind whips across the mountainside. There are photos of the group setting up camp, melting snow for drinking water, and cooking simple meals over small camp stoves. In one of the final images taken before the incident, the hikers can be seen digging into the snow to anchor their tent against the slope of Kholat Syakhl. Their journals paint a similar picture. Igor Dyatlov wrote casually about the difficulty of the terrain and the constant battle against wind and cold. Rustam Slobodin joked in his notes about how exhausting it was to ski through deep powder. One entry even describes the group singing songs together in the tent to pass time during the long winter nights. There was no sign of fear and no hint that anything unusual had happened. In fact, the final entries described the expedition exactly the way experienced hikers would expect a winter trek to unfold: cold, exhausting, but exciting. Which makes what happened next even more disturbing, because sometime after these photographs were taken and those journal entries were written, something had changed. Something powerful enough to send 9 experienced hikers running into the frozen darkness.
On February 1st, the hikers climbed the open slopes of Kholat Sakil. Wind blasted across the ridge, pushing clouds of snow across the mountainside. Instead of retreating into the forest below, the group chose to set up camp on the exposed slope. The decision that may have been strategic, descending into the trees, would mean losing elevation and potentially altering the route the next morning. So they dug into the snow and pitched their large canvas tent against the wind. Inside, they settled for the evening. Boots were removed to dry, coats were hung up along the walls of the tent, and dinner was eaten and journals were updated. At some point during the night, the hikers likely climbed into their sleeping bags, expecting to wake up and continue the expedition in the morning. But something had happened in the darkness. Sometime after midnight, the occupants of the tent suddenly cut their way out through the fabric. Investigators later found long slashes running across the side of the tent. The cuts were clearly made from inside. The hikers had not used the entrance flap. They had torn their way out. Even stranger, most of their clothing and equipment remained inside. Boots lined the floor of the tent. Warm coats were still hanging along the walls. Flashlights and food supplies were untouched. Outside, investigators discovered a trail of footprints leading down the mountain. Some were made by people wearing socks. Others were barefoot. Here's a little information some other podcasters have skimmed over or just plain ignored. Among the cameras recovered from the Dyatlov expedition was one roll of film that investigators found especially unsettling. When the photographs were developed, most of the images showed ordinary scenes from the journey. Ski tracks across frozen valleys, the hikers laughing in camp, snow blowing across the slopes of the mountains. But the final photograph was one of the cameras.
On one of the cameras was different.
No. Okay. It was dark, almost completely black. At first glance, it looked like a mistake, the kind of accidental shot when the shutter fires while the camera is still inside a pocket or hanging from a strap. But when investigators looked closer, they noticed faint shapes in the frame. A blurred streak of light cuts across the image. Behind it is a vague silhouette against the snow, almost like a figure standing in the darkness or a beam of light shining through the blowing snow. No one knows exactly what the photograph shows, but some researchers believe it was taken while the camera was moving quickly, perhaps during the moment the hikers fled their tent. Others think it may have been a simple accidental exposure taken while someone adjusted their equipment. But because the image was captured so close to the time of the incident, it has taken on almost a mythic reputation amongst those who study the case.
To some people, it looks like chaos frozen in a single frame, a moment of confusion and a flash of light in the darkness. The final photograph ever taken by the Dyatlov hikers before they disappeared into the frozen night. Whatever happened on the slopes of Kholat Sakil that night, that blurred and mysterious image may be the last silent witness to it. And after that photograph was taken, the story becomes far darker, because weeks later, search teams climbing that same mountain would find the hikers' tent torn open and their footprints leading away into the snow. When the hikers failed to return on schedule, search teams were sent into the mountains. It took weeks to locate the campsite. The tent was found partially buried in the snow, collapsed on one side, but still largely intact. Inside were sleeping bags, clothing, cameras, food, and the personal belongings. It looked as if the occupants had simply vanished. Following footprints downhill, searchers eventually reached the edge of a forest nearly a mile away. There, beneath a massive cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, I'm trying, guys, lay near the remains of a small campfire. Both were wearing only thin clothing. Their hands were badly burned and their skin torn, as if they had tried desperately to climb the tree or break branches. Branches were broken high above the ground, suggesting someone had climbed 15 feet into the tree. From that position, they could have seen the distant glow of their abandoned tent on the mountain. Further along the path toward the tent, 3 more bodies were discovered. Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. Each of them appeared to have been attempting to return to the campsite. They were scattered along the snowy slope, frozen where they had collapsed. But the remaining 4 hikers were still missing. For months, snowstorms buried the mountain deeper and deeper. Then in May, searchers discovered a ravine farther into the forest. Inside it lay the final 4 victims.
The search teams that discovered the campsite were not ordinary hikers. Many of them were experienced mountaineers and military personnel familiar with the winter survival in the Ural Mountains. And even they struggled to understand what they were seeing. The tent was the first thing that troubled them. It was still standing, partially collapsed under drifting snow, but not destroyed. The structure itself appeared stable enough that the hikers could have remained inside safely. Yet the fabric had been slashed open from the inside. Investigators later reconstructed the scene and concluded that the hikers had exited the tent quickly, possibly in panic. But there were no signs of an avalanche at the site. The slope above the campsite was largely intact, and the snowpack had not buried the tent. This detail immediately raised doubts about whether an avalanche had forced them to flee. Then there were the footprints. Searchers followed the tracks carefully as they descended the slope toward the forest. The prints were surprisingly orderly, suggesting the hikers had not been running blindly. Instead, it looked like they had walked downhill in a group. Some barefoot, some wearing socks, others wearing only a single shoe. That detail deeply disturbed the investigators. Experienced hikers would never voluntarily leave their shelter in sub-zero temperatures without boots unless they believed staying inside was even more dangerous. The lead investigator on the case, Lev Ivanov, it's like the most Russian name there is, yeah. Ivanov, later admitted in interviews that several aspects of the incidents were impossible to explain. Witnesses in nearby villages report seeing glowing spheres or orange lights in the sky around the same time the hikers disappeared. Ivanov even ordered some tests for radiation on several pieces of clothing recovered from the bodies. Some of those garments showed elevated radiation levels. In the official report, the Soviet government ultimately concluded that the hikers had died due to what they described as a compelling natural force.
Bullshit.
The wording was vague, the case was quietly closed, and the mountains returned to silence. The cedar tree the first 2 bodies were discovered became one of the most haunting locations in the entire investigation. When search teams reached the forest at the base of the mountain, they found the remains of a small fire beneath the branches of a massive Siberian cedar tree. The snow around the area had been disturbed and broken branches were littered the ground. 2 bodies lay near the fire. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonychenko were barefoot, wearing only thin layers of clothing that offered almost no protection against the brutal cold. Temperatures that night were estimated to have dropped below negative 25 degrees Celsius.
What immediately caught the investigators' attention were the injuries to the hands and arms that we discussed earlier. Both men had severe burns and torn skin on their fingers, as if they'd been desperately grabbing burning branches or feeding the fire without regard for pain. Some of the wounds were so severe that the bone was visible beneath the damaged skin. Above them, the branches of the cedar trees told another strange part of the story. Several limbs had been snapped or stripped of bark as high as 15 feet off the ground, and it appeared that one or both of the men had climbed the tree. From that height, they would have had a clear view of the mountain slope where their tent had been left behind nearly a mile away. Investigators believe they may have climbed the tree trying to see whether it was safe to return to the campsite, or perhaps they were searching for something else in the darkness. Either way, the evidence suggested a terrifying scenario. After fleeing the tent, the hikers reached the forest and tried to build a fire to survive the freezing night. 2 of them remained near the cedar tree, desperately trying to keep the flames alive while watching the distant mountainside. But the rest of the group had already moved deeper into the forest. Another disturbing detail discovered during the investigation involved the clothing worn by the hikers when their bodies were recovered. When the first 5 victims were found, many of them were dressed in only partial clothing. Some wore socks instead of boots, others had no hats or gloves despite the deadly cold. But the 4 hikers discovered later in the ravine were wearing additional layers that did not originally belong to them. Investigators determined that some of the clothing had been removed from the bodies of the hikers who died first. For example, Lyudmila Dubinina was found wearing pants that originally belonged to Yuri Krivonychenko. Pieces of fabric had been cut away and wrapped around feet and legs for insulation.
These details suggest that after the first members of the group died from exposure, the surviving hikers made the grim decision to take their clothing in order to stay alive. It was a practical survival tactic often seen in extreme conditions. but it also revealed something important about the timeline of the tragedy. Not everyone died at the same time. Some of the hikers survived long enough to attempt building shelters, redistributing clothing, and possibly searching for a way back to the tent. The group had not simply panicked and perished immediately, they struggled to survive. And the struggle likely lasted hours in freezing darkness. By the time the last 4 hikers reached the ravine and attempted to construct a snow shelter, the situation had already become desperate. The evidence scattered across the mountainside told a slow and tragic story of people trying to endure the impossible.
The 4 bodies found in the ravine were partially buried beneath meters of snow. Investigators immediately realized these deaths were different from the others. Nikolai Thibault Brignoli that does not sound Russian, had suffered a massive skull fracture. Semyon Zolotarov had several ribs crushed, and Lyudmila Dubanina had severe chest trauma so powerful that multiple ribs were broken. Medical examiners compared the injuries to those seen in high-speed car accidents. Yet there were almost no external wounds, no deep cuts, no signs of violent struggle, just devastating internal damage. Dubanina was also missing her tongue and parts of her mouth tissue, though later research suggests animals or decomposition may have caused this. Still, the injuries raised serious questions. What could have inflicted that kind of force in the middle of a remote wilderness, and why had the hikers fled their tent in the first place?
For decades, investigators had tried to reconstruct what might have happened that night. One of the most widely accepted explanations today involves a rare type of avalanche known as a slab avalanche. A layer of hardened snow may have fractured beneath the tent, causing the hikers to believe a larger avalanche was about to bury them. Panicking, they cut their way out and fled down slope. In the darkness and chaos, they may have become separated and unable to return to the tent. Another theory involves infrasound, a phenomenon where strong winds flowing across the mountain ridges generate extremely low-frequency vibrations. These vibrations cannot be heard, but can cause anxiety, nausea, and overwhelming feelings of fear. Some researchers believe the hikers may have experienced sudden psychological panic triggered by these natural sound waves. During the Cold War, speculation also emerged about secret Soviet weapons testings. Some witnesses reported seeing glowing orange lights in the sky around the time of the incident. Researchers suggest the possibility of parachute mines or experimental explosives detonating in the area, which could have potentially explained the internal injuries. More sensational theories have involve encounters with unknown creatures, government cover-ups, or extraterrestrial activity.
As always.
But no theory perfectly explains every detail, which is why exactly why the mystery continues to capture public imagination. There's some movies. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, also called Devil's Pass, a found footage horror film and unknown compelling force documentary. There's some books. Dead Mountain by Donnie Eicher, I
think.
Mountains of the Dead by Keith McCluskey. Games. Collat, a survival horror game based entirely on the mystery.
There's actually a few indie games that cover the Dyatlov stuff where you can actually go in there as an investigator and find the pictures, which is really cool. I have Collat. It is literally a walking simulator. You don't really do anything. It's real creepy, though. Oh my god, it's real creepy. I have not gotten very far into it. 1, because I got bored, and 2, because I was creeped out the entire time, even though nothing happened. It's real creepy. Next, we're going to move on to the Yuba County Five. Nearly 20 years after the Dyatlov Pass, another strange mountain mystery unfolded in California. In February 1978, 5 men attended a college basketball game in Chico. They were excited about participating in a basketball tournament the next day. After the game, they began driving home. Instead of returning to their town, their car was later discovered far into the mountains along a remote road. The vehicle had plenty of fuel and it was not stuck, yet the men had abandoned it and walked away. Searchers eventually discovered bodies scattered throughout the wilderness. One man had died of hypothermia deep inside the forest. Another was found inside a Forest Service trailer containing food and supplies. Investigators determined he had survived there for weeks, yet the food had never been opened. The reason they drove into the mountains still remains unknown. So there's not, if you looked into this, there's not a lot of information. I was trying to find stuff, and there's literally nothing.
Yeah.
But if you look at the map, the 3 are very scattered away from each other. It makes no sense on why they are so, or 1, 3, but the guys are so scattered away from each other, it makes no sense. And, I tried so hard to find information on this, and a lot of it's just speculation. So I didn't really want to put that in here. There's a book called Out of Bounds by Drew Beeson that kind of covers this. There's a documentary called Missing 411: The Hunted. And then BuzzFeed actually made an episode about this. So if you want to look into it a little bit more, you can go watch that. I don't like listening to podcasts before I make an episode about what I'm making an episode about, just because I don't want to steal their information, that they researched.
Yeah.
So
another good one is Wendigoon on YouTube.
Wendigoon.
He makes all kinds of long format videos about just whatever.
That's fair.
A lot of missing people stuff. The Hollywood shootout I told you about. He's made a lot of videos on different things.
I'll have to look that up. This one I don't remember because I'm behind on my morbid podcast episodes. I'm trying to catch up, but there's so many. I don't think they covered this one. I know that there was a TV show. It was like one of the NCIS or CSI ones.
Yeah.
They covered something very similar to this, and they kind of made it an ending where somebody was just really mad at them and drove them out there and then left them and then whatever. But I don't think I've ever actually watched anything about this. Next.
All right. The Donner Party wasn't a very good one.
Nope.
Decades earlier, during America's westward expansion, another group became trapped in a deadly mountain winter. In 1846, the Donner Party set out for California along the Oregon Trail.
I like how both of these are California.
Hoping to save time, they took a newly advertised shortcut called the Hastings Cutoff. The route turned out to be far more dangerous than expected. The group fell weeks behind schedule, and by the time they reached the Sierra Nevada mountains, winter storms had arrived. Snow blocked the passes. The travelers built crude cabins and waited for rescue that took months to arrive. The food ran out, desperation grew, and when rescuers finally reached the survivors, evidence revealed that some members of the group had resorted to cannibalism, and nearly half the travelers had died.
So with this one, that's really all the fucking information. That's everything about it. What's really cool is if you go through that area, like nowadays, you can actually see that the state has put up a sign on both sides of the pass, where it tells you this is the site of the Donner Party incident or whatever you want to call it. So basically what happened was they were going through the pass, as he said. They got snowed in, and they pretty much just ate each other to stay alive as long as possible, which I can already assume was a very hard decision.
Yeah.
And that was really the only choice that they had at that point, besides just all dying together. So I guess in the act of survivalism, I guess. What I would be interested in knowing is what was going through their heads at the time. Like, if any of them had journals or whatever. Like, knowing what they were going through would have been, I feel like, really interesting.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Books, The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. There's another book and a comic book too. It's like a middle school style book called Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, where it's about the spy Nathan Hale, the American spy during the Revolutionary War. Yeah, and he has some kind of he can see into the future right before he gets hanged, and he sees all the things that happen in the future. So the ironclad ships during the Civil War, the one on the Donner Dinner Party, the end of the American Revolution. And I think there's more books now, but those are the only 3 I remember from middle school that I read. And then a comic book called, what's it? It's Fubar. It's where they just insert zombies into historical settings. So the Roman times, World War II, World War I, the American Civil War, all that jazz. And there's one where the reason... about the Donner Dinner Party, where the reason why they ran up into the mountains is because they were being chased by zombies.
I mean, it would make sense if zombies were real.
Yeah. Movies, The Donner Dinner Party from 2009, and Ravenous, which was loosely inspired by it. And then the games, The Oregon Trail.
which does talk about it, weirdly enough. Or the original one does. I don't know if the newer one that's more cartoony does. The one that I know, the one that you can get on Microsoft Store, it does not, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
But the original one from like, I don't know, early 2000s that I try to play on my computer all the time that decides to fail halfway through. That one does cover it at one point if you take that route, because there's many routes you can take through the game. It does talk about it. Because if you talk to the people around that area, they'll be like, "Hey, did you hear about that family from blah 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 blah?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I should not have known about that when I was fucking 9 or 10. I'm just saying, I should not have known about that, or however the fuck old I was. 9 or 10, yeah, that would have been
I don't know. I know about the original Oregon Trail game, and that was it.
Love that game.
You have died from dysentery.
Fucking, I died so many times when I was younger. Now I can get through it, and I'm like, I got most of us. So, why do these stories stay with us? The Dyatlov Pass hikers, the Yuba County Five, and the Donner Party. Different times, different places, different circumstances. Yet they share something deeply unsettling. All three stories involve people confronting the brutal power of nature. Isolation, cold, darkness, and decisions were made under extreme stress. What makes these cases so fascinating is that they force us to imagine ourselves in the same situation.
Why would we have stayed in the tent? Would we have stayed in the tent, stayed in the car, or taken the shortcut through the mountains? The wilderness has a way of stripping away certainty, and sometimes the mountain keeps their secrets forever.
Okay, let's go through this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happened with the Dyatlov Pass? What do you think happened to them, in your opinion?
I mean, they probably got spooked in the middle of the night, and that's why they all just kind of ran off.
Group hysteria?
Yeah. And then, I don't know how you explain the radiation stuff.
That one stumped me.
Without going into, the conspiracy theory stuff about, the Russians testing weapons and stuff in that area. I
lean more towards the Russians testing weapons. Because what would be a better place than far fucking away from everybody than up in the fucking mountains, It's a Category 3 mountain range, so you have to be very good to be up there.
Yeah.
Not many people are going to be up there at a time. And then, the only people that would be up there are the natives, and they even said they saw stuff. So, is it really that far-fetched that they could be testing something?
No. I mean, like you said, it's during the Cold War, so the Soviets and the Americans were always coming up with some new shit all the time.
Yeah. I remember reading something before the Russian government supposedly let out the files, was that there was somebody who had whistleblown or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That they were testing a type of, I don't know if it's hypersonic or whatever, but it pushes out the intense waves. And that's what they were testing, which would explain the dude's ribs who were cracked with no external injuries.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. So, I mean, it would technically cover that. But just the fear that they had, that's what confuses me in that. Because unless they heard it, or it was extremely close, I doubt it would have been, something that would have accounted for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, there's no way to really know.
Mm-mm.
Unless we, invent time travel and go back and watch from, a distance or whatever.
I hope, if time travel becomes a thing, that somebody will go back in time and, watch this shit happen so we know what the fuck happened and we finally get an answer. Because I'm tired of these whole mystery things. Oh, what happened? No, where did the Roanoke people go?
Who knows?
What happened to these people who were eating themselves? Where did they go?
Well, you already just answered your question. Eating each other.
Yeah. What is your opinion on the Yuba 5?
I don't know. Like I said, I watched the Wendigoon video on it, and I was listening to it, and it just, I don't know, it didn't really interest me that much.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of information, which I feel like that is something you should have a lot of information about. At least investigative information. Should you not know a little bit more on what happened to these dudes?
Yeah, I mean,
I know cell phones weren't around, so they couldn't really track their locations very well, but still.
Yeah, I mean, because all it just really sounds like is they just got to a point and then just all just kind of wandered off and just died.
Yeah. But why would you leave the car that's perfectly fine? And why would you go to a completely wrong completely wrong direction from where you were supposed to be going?
Who knows?
It makes no sense. And then what do you feel about the Donner Party? What is your thoughts on that? Do you think that they were smart in trying to save time, or do you think that they should have looked at it better?
I think they should have planned it better, because I think they probably only had so much food before to get to California where they were going.
Because you can only have so much weight in a wagon that can hold, depending on what animals they had, whether it was oxen or
mules or whatever,
horses or mules or whatever.
But yeah, I think they only had so much food at the time, and if they had waited through the winter before
going,
or if they like stopped and then waited out the winter outside of the mountains, they probably would have ran out of food and probably wouldn't have enough food to make it through during the summertime or like the spring or whatever when the snow melted.
They could have definitely stopped at a town way before the pass, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like even back then they would have known that it was coming. Like, a winter was coming.
Yeah, but there's probably like delays and they didn't go as fast as they thought they would, or who knows what.
Yeah.
And so whoever was in charge was like, oh, we could probably just get through it real fast. No issue. And then they get stuck up in the top of the mountains during winter when it's snowy as fuck all the time. And
can't see shit,
don't know where you're going, and you get stuck.
Yeah.
And also for being a brand new like trail too, and not many people go through it. There's not really signs or clear pathways to go.
People you could ask, hey, how was the pass, or blah, blah, blah.
You just
blah.
kind of have to figure it out until you get through.
And then you end up eating the long pork.
Yeah, and then when you run out of food and you can't go nowhere, you start eating other people.
Yeah. I don't know. I know I've never been in that situation, and I hope to fucking whoever's listening that I never am, but I don't think I could ever be desperate enough to eat a person.
I think a lot of people say that, but then push comes to shove and they do it anyways.
Do you think that humans have an innate thing inside of them that where survival means do whatever you have to?
Yeah.
And that just clicks on at some point?
Yeah, it's human nature to want to survive through everything. I mean, what do you think? There's so many shows and video games about like surviving in the apocalypse and whatever, like Minecraft or State of Decay or Fallout, or whatever, where it's just people living in the wastelands.
I feel like survival games are just everywhere. Everybody wants to do them, except for you. You don't like them.
I like survival games, but they have to be a certain kind of survival game.
I like ones that have danger in them other than just the wildlife.
And how do you know I don't like survival games when you only play like 2?
Because that's the only game I like, and you tell me you don't like the games I play.
Yeah, because we play very different games.
Exactly.
And your games just don't hold my interest.
Exactly. All my games are survival games of different varying degrees. All right. Do you have anything else? Any other comments about the 3 cases or any of the cases that are similar? There are quite a lot of similar ones like this, where they've gone out somewhere and then some weird mystery has circumvented them and then they've gone missing or whatever. There's quite a few.
I mean, not really. I mean, there's not many that I'm aware of or that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okie dokie. Well, you guys, I hope you enjoyed. I wanted to do something a little creepy because I'm on a creepy kick right now. So if y'all have anything that y'all would like us to go over or research for you guys, email us at echosofthepast.pod@gmail.com. You can also email us your stories, your comments, I don't know, anything else? A funny joke? Sure. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, because we need more subscribers. Hello to the people in the other countries that listen to us, because we have now hit, 20 countries now, I think? It's quite a few. Let me look.
Give me a second, I can look.
You'll probably get it faster. You're already in the app. We've hit quite a few. And yay for us, we've now hit over 400 listens, which is fantastic. And I'm really proud of us for that.
17.
Woo! We are in 17 countries, and our top one besides the United States is the Philippines and then Nigeria. So hello, you guys from across the water. Hope you enjoy. Tell your friends. We need more people.
I have a buddy from the Army who's Filipino.
Yeah, I know. Every time I say anything about Filipino food that I want to try, you're like, hey, let me ask my buddy.
I do not say that.
You did. You told me that last time when I was talking about, it's like one of their drinks that they drink when it's hot outside, and it's like coconut milk or milk in general, and then it's got like jelly things in it, and it looks so good, and I want to try it so bad. I don't know what it's called. I never remember what it's called, but I want to try it.
I don't know. I never asked him.
I know. It's fine. I'll find a YouTube video later on. Try to make it because it sounds good. All right, guys. So I guess that's it for us.
Thanks for wandering through history with us on Echoes of the Past.
If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself.
But we promise not to. See you in the next Echo.